Almah means an unmarried young woman. Betula means a woman who's never had sex. In the Hebrew context, in the Jewish culture, those are synonymous. If you're unmarried as a Jewish woman, you should not have had sex. So the Messiah is the rock, yet God is the rock. God places the rock, but God is the rock. How does that make sense? Well, it makes sense so he builds this structure, and the way he builds this structure is by picking up the stones of the rubble of the mainland city that are 200 years old, and he throws them into the sea. This thing that says, I'm going to throw your stones and timber and rubble into the sea, this literally happened with Alexander the Great. He made it no longer an island, he turned it into a peninsula, and then conquered it. Like the absolute mad lad. He was so salty that he built a bridge in the ocean in 300 BC to conquer this city. Not only did he raise it to the ground, he threw those rocks into the sea. In this video, we're going to be going over Isaiah again, this part 2, and this time we're going to be talking about the prophecies in Isaiah about Jesus, but also just fulfilled prophecy in general. Because Isaiah is one of the books that has the most prophecies of any of the prophets. It's not only the longest of the prophets, not by word, but by chapter, but it's also the most prophetic about Jesus. There's more messianic prophecies in Isaiah than any other book. So, we're going to be going through a bunch of those prophecies today. We're going to be going through also some prophecies that are fulfilled, even though atheists like to claim that they weren't fulfilled. So, the first prophecy we're going to be going over is Isaiah 7:14. And this is the virgin passage that Jews love to debate. Is this actually saying a virgin will conceive? That's going to be the first thing we're going to tackle. Yes, for a variety of reasons. But before that, does this word virgin mean virgin in Hebrew? Because it says the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and we will call him Emmanuel. So this word virgin in Hebrew is Almah. Almah in Hebrew means young woman, specifically an unmarried young woman is how you would use it. Now there is a word in Hebrew for virgin specifically. This word does mean virgin in Hebrew, betula. This word, as I mentioned in my Rebecca video, always means a virgin. Almah should imply virgin, and that's kind of where we're going to get into a big disagreement. Almah means an unmarried young woman. Betula means a woman who's never had sex. In the Hebrew context, in the Jewish culture, those are synonymous. Those are the same thing. If you're unmarried as a Jewish woman, you should not have had sex. If you are a virgin, you should not have had sex. And this gets into an important discussion. Almah is used 11 times in the Hebrew Bible. It is used twice as a title in the Psalms, and it's used 9 times as a word. Of the 9 times it's used as a word, 7 of them are translated as young woman in the English translation. 2 of them are translated as virgin in Song of Solomon and in Isaiah 7:14. Jews like to point out that it's only translated as virgin in 7:14 for Isaiah. That's not true. It's also translated as virgins in Song of Solomon. But the context usually implies virginity. Or if you're a young unmarried woman, you shouldn't have had sex. Surprise, surprise. The Jewish context would be purity. They had a purity culture. Women who committed fornication were to be killed. So it's not unreasonable to think that, Almah means virgin. That the proper translation can be virgin, not necessarily has to be young woman, but it does. I mean, if you're an unmarried woman, you shouldn't have sex. Crazy idea. I know, right? Anyway, we can actually show that this does mean virgin because Rebecca is called a Betula. She's also called an Almah several times. Almah. So she is called both a Nahar, an Almah, and a Betula. So this, shows that she's an adult, but it also shows that Almah and Betula is, interchangeable with each other. You don't have to have just one. So Isaiah 7:14 here does mean virgin. There's not much debate around that unless you want to say that, an unmarried woman isn't necessarily a virgin, but then you're kind of destroying the Jewish context of this passage. So for Jews who argue that it doesn't mean virgin or it can't mean virgin, you're just wrong. We have instances in the Torah where it uses both for a single person. It means both. So Anyway, so the context means virgin. If we look at the rest of the passage, was this actually fulfilled in the time of Isaiah? So this is to Ahaz, one of the kings of Judah, and Ahaz is terrified, and he's asking for other people to help him from the armies coming against him, specifically Damascus and Samaria. So his neighbors to the north are trying to conquer him. He's terrified, and again the Lord spoke to Ahaz and said, ask the Lord your God for a sign, whether in the deepest depths or in the highest heights. So he's saying, hey, test me, I will provide for you, I will care for you. And Ahaz is like, I will not ask, I will not put the Lord to the test. This is not piety, this is him not trusting Yahweh to actually fulfill him. So then Isaiah said, hear now, you house of David, is it not enough to try the patience of humans? Will you try the patience of my God also? Therefore Yahweh himself will give you a sign, the virgin will conceive, the Almah will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. He will be eating curds and honey when he knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right. Before the boy knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right, the land of the two kings you dread will be laid waste. The Lord will bring on you and your people and the house of your father a time unlike since Ephraim broke away from Judah. He will bring the king of Assyria. So in this passage, we have before the boy knows right and wrong. So when he's still an infant, when he's still a toddler, before he knows and he's aware of sin and evil, the kings will be destroyed. So this prophecy was given right when Ahaz became king. That happened in 733 BC. Well, the kings were destroyed in battle. Rezin and Remaliah, his son specifically, those guys were destroyed in 732. So within a year, they were destroyed. So the boy must have been born immediately in order for this prophecy to come true in that time period. So for this prophecy to be fulfilled already and for it to not apply to Jesus, we need it to be completely fulfilled in the time of Ahaz. The way Jews like to argue this is that there are three possibilities. Well, really four. One, it didn't actually come true. It's a failed prophecy, which Jews and Christians don't agree on. Two, that the prophecy is about Hezekiah, which I'll get to in a second. Three, the prophecy is about some child that we don't have recorded in the Bible, which would be strange because it's supposed to be a sign, so why wouldn't it be recorded? And then four, the prophecy is actually about Isaiah himself and his son, which I think we have the best evidence for. So going through Hezekiah, Hezekiah was born in 740 BC, so 8 years before this moment in time. An 8-year-old knows the difference between right and wrong, largely speaking. So before he knows how to choose right and wrong, this sign will happen. He'll be eating curds and honey. This implies an infancy, but also an infancy of someone who has like wealth. The milk and honey passage, like they have supplies and they're wealthy people. But it's an infant because the infants would eat the curds and the honey because that's what they could actually consume whenever they're weaning. So this is a child who is weaning who doesn't know right from wrong. So this is a 1 to 2-year-old. Okay, so a 1 to 2-year-old born around 732 would be what would actually fulfill the prophecy. Hezekiah being born in 740, being an 8-year-old, being fully on food, because you're fully on food by the age of 2. I know I have a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. My 1.5-year-old's fully on food. Anyway, you're fully on food by that point in time. This does not apply to Hezekiah. So even though Hezekiah has a theophoric name, his name includes God's name within it, and that's what Emmanuel, so that's why they point to Hezekiah, because Emmanuel means God with us. So for God to be with us, Hezekiah was one of the last good kings next to like Josiah. For Hezekiah to be a righteous king, a righteous servant of Yahweh, him being called Emmanuel kind of works. Now he's not necessarily God with us, but he brings God along with the people. He is faithful to God, and his name contains a theophoric name, like his name contains the name of God, Hezekiah. That doesn't work. He was a boy. He knew the right difference right and wrong. He was not on milk and honey. His mom was not a virgin. She wasn't even an Almah. She was married. So this doesn't work. Emmanuel only slightly works, but I don't think it actually works that well because he is not God with us. And then this doesn't work at all. So Hezekiah doesn't really work. The Jews were like, hey, it's Hezekiah. For sure, that's not a position I think that can actually be held. So it doesn't make sense for it to be unfulfilled because we both agree that's fulfilled. It also doesn't make sense for it to be some random woman. So the only other option would be Isaiah himself. The reason why I say that is because literally the next chapter starts with this. So the Lord said to me, take a large scroll and write on it with an ordinary pen, Meher Shahal Hashbez. So I called in Uriah the priest and Zechariah son of Jeberechiah as a reliable witness for me. Then I made love to the prophetess, his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to a son. And the Lord said to me, name him Meher Shahal Hashbaz. For before the boy knows knows how to say my father or my mother, Abba and Ima. The wealth of Damascus and the plunder of Samaria will be carried off by the king of Assyria. So the kings that he is worried about are going to be destroyed by Assyria, which is what this prophecy is. The two kings that he's worried about will be destroyed by Assyria. The next chapter starts with a son who is born, who is named with a special name, and then the kings are destroyed, and the child isn't old enough to say Ima and Abba. Those are very simple words. My 1-year-old can say Dada. She can also say Ma. That's not that more complicated than Ima and Abba. So for the boy to not be able to speak these things and this happen means this is in 733, 732. So the prophetess, who is his wife, it's not an Almah, mind you, gave birth to a son. So this is the sign. You know, Meheshahashbaz means, oh, you can't actually see it on screen. That's sad. Quick to the plunder, swift to the spoil. So he named his son a sign that relates to the event that's happening. And the child is not old enough to know right from wrong, not even old enough to say Ima and Abba, not old enough to be off of curds and honey whenever the Assyrians come to destroy Damascus and Samaria. So this fulfills the prophecy in the text directly, yet it doesn't completely fulfill it. And that's where we're going to get into dual fulfillment prophecy. So in the Old Testament, there's many times where a prophecy is given and it is only partially fulfilled immediately and it's completely fulfilled later on. An example might be Genesis 16, where it says Ishmael will be a man of violence and will be hostile towards his brothers. Ishmael himself was not that. Him and Isaac got along great. We don't know how he got along with his other 4 brothers that were born after Sarah died, but we know for a fact that him and Isaac were together. They buried their father together in peace and they lived next to each other in the region. So Ishmael does not fulfill it completely. He partially fulfills it because his name is Ishmael and he becomes a mighty nation, but he doesn't completely fulfill it because he's not super violent. Muhammad does fulfill that because he is super violent. So Muhammad could be the total fulfillment of that prophecy and Ishmael is the partial fulfillment. We also have a lot of these with Jesus and with Tyre, as we'll get to. Tyre was partially destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar and fully destroyed by Alexander the Great and Muslims later on, which we'll get to at the end of the video. Jesus was partially fulfilling like Isaiah 11, where we have the shoot will come, the Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, but righteously will judge the needy, his righteousness will be his belt. So he's gonna, he judges by not what he sees, not what he hears, but he knows intrinsically because he is God. So he fulfills these aspects of him. He's sinless, he's righteous. He has the spirit of wisdom, the spirit of counsel, spirit of knowledge. He knew the thoughts of men, but he also didn't bring in the Davidic kingdom of peace that the people were waiting for. So all nations will rally to him. That didn't quite happen with Jesus. His resting place will be glorious. That did happen. He's in heaven. In that day, the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the surviving remnant. This has not happened yet. It's starting to happen now with Israel being gathered back in, 1940s, of his people from Assyria, from Lower Egypt. So this is currently happening, but it didn't happen for 2,000 years. So even though Jesus came, even though that there was a fulfillment here, it was a partial fulfillment where Jesus did fulfill these things, but he did not fulfill the other parts of it. The Davidic peace, the goat will lie down with the leopard, the calf and the lion you're learning together, like in a child leading. This is prophetic language of a time of great peace. There's been more war and more death from war since Jesus than before Jesus. So this did not be fulfilled in Jesus, and that's why Jews are like, oh, he's a false prophet. But whenever we think about dual fulfillment prophecy, and we can agree on dual fulfillment prophecy between Jews and Christians, doesn't necessarily have to be about Jesus. We can agree that the head of the serpent being crushed by the woman is a future prophecy that is partially fulfilled in Abraham and his seed and the promises through that, but it's not entirely fulfilled. There's a covenant that comes in, and Isaac and Jacob fulfill some aspects of the covenants that are given to Abraham, but it's not complete until the Messiah comes. So there's partial fulfillment, but yet future fulfillment expected. Jews and Christians agree on that. We just disagree on what is actually being the case. So we say, okay, for things like Isaiah 7:14, this is for sure a dual fulfillment prophecy, and we know it from the text because the fulfillment in the text that's given, Meher-Shahashbaz, this dude is not born from an Almah, an unmarried woman. The prophetess was married. She was also probably not that young because Isaiah was decently old whenever this happened. So she's probably in her 30s or 40s. She would not be in the category of Almah anymore because that's like 12 and a half to 30 is like that general category of young woman. So a young woman, whether it's a virgin or just young young woman in general. She did not fulfill that category. And he was not called Emmanuel. It's Maher-Shalash-Hashbaz. So we have this aspect and this aspect not being fulfilled in Isaiah and his wife. So this is a prophecy that's partially fulfilled. It was a sign, and he was not old enough to know right from wrong, and the kings were destroyed. So there is partial fulfillment here, yet it's not entirely fulfilled. So we agree, Jews and Christians, that this is not a fulfillment in its entirety. Jesus fulfills it in its entirety. That's what we get in Matthew. He was virgin born. Now, did Matthew misquote this? No. So as I mentioned earlier, Betula is how you would say virgin. Matthew is not quoting from the Hebrew here. He's quoting from the Greek. So if you look at it in the Greek, it's Partheneos. Okay, well, this whole passage, if we look at it in not necessarily Hebrew, but in the Septuagint, it's Partheneos. It's actually almost word for word a quotation. There is some differences here. So like this is a different word. It's not necessarily differences in what he's quoting. It means the same thing. It's just more modern version of Koine Greek. Because the Septuagint is like 200 years before when Matthew is writing, whenever this section was being written. So Matthew is directly quoting from the Septuagint, and the Septuagint has it as virgin explicitly. So this word means virgin explicitly. You just wouldn't use it any other way. So we know for sure that this is not fulfilled. It is fulfilled in Jesus. We know that it can mean virgin because of the context. An unmarried woman is not a virgin. And we know that it means young woman because of all the other times it's translated. Rebecca is called both of those. So she is a young woman and a virgin. Jesus was born from a young unmarried woman who was also a virgin. So it was just both of them. Now, she's betrothed, not married, but semantics there. Anyway, this is fulfilled in Jesus. It's not fulfilled in Isaiah or his son. And it's not fulfilled in Hezekiah, definitely, because Hezekiah was 8 whenever this prophecy was given. So it just doesn't work. So Jewish understanding of this doesn't work. Christian does. The only way it can work is with Jesus. So other prophecies of Jesus, because it wasn't supposed to be the entire video. 9:6. I might actually limit the number of prophecies we're doing in this video. There's several hundred prophecies of Jesus in Isaiah. Just go through the book, you'll find them. I'm going to go through several more that are deeply important and some that are not talked about as much. So let's talk about Yahweh. And for us a child is born, to us a son is given. So this is like in Proverbs 30, it's talking about Yahweh, and it's talking about what is his name, Yahweh, and what is the name of his son. Surely you know. Well, God is the Holy One. God is the one he's talking to. Who's the son? God has a son. This isn't Hezekiah, because Hezekiah is not everlasting father. He was a father, he wasn't everlasting. He will reign on David's throne over his kingdom. It's true that Hezekiah did do that, with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. Hezekiah didn't do that. In peace there will be no end. He didn't do that. Prince of Peace didn't happen. He was at war. Mighty God doesn't apply. Wonderful Counselor, probably not. From my knowledge, Hezekiah doesn't have that much of it. It's not like Solomon. So, for us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor. And this term is actually used of Yahweh himself. So this phrase is used of God. It's not the exact Hebrew, but it's very similar to a phrase used exactly of God, which just means wondrous, wonderful, awe-inspiring. So he'll be wonderful. He'll be called Wonderful. So this is a divine title. Mighty God, divine title, El Gabor. Everlasting Father, divine title. Prince of Peace, probably divine title. Of the greatness of his government and peace there shall be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing it and upholding it with justice and righteousness, sinlessness. That definitely did not happen with Hezekiah and his children. From that time on and forever. Again, eternal. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. So the zeal of the Lord Almighty, well, that's the only thing that held Jesus to the cross. So this appears to be both divine and messianic and about Jesus. I don't see of any other way to have this other than it being divine. Of the 7 titles applied to him here, 6 of them are divine. It's not Hezekiah. He doesn't fulfill it. It's definitely not Ahaz, who could fulfill it other than the Messiah. But the Messiah is God and everlasting Father and wonderful and eternal. Yes, Jesus is. No one else would be. Your understanding of Messiah has to change to incorporate all of it. Now Jews will just be like, oh, this isn't messianic. You're a crazy person. The throne of David. This is definitely messianic. We also have a prophecy in Isaiah 6 where Jesus actually quotes this section where they will be ever hearing but not understanding, ever seeing but not perceiving. Jesus quotes this directly. So we have this type of fulfillment as well where there's just direct quotation. So there's multiple types of fulfillment and prophecy in Isaiah. There is the fulfillment where we have the immediate fulfillment entirely done in the time of Isaiah. We have immediate fulfillment slightly after the time of Isaiah with like the siege of Tyre. We have fulfillment in the Messiah in his first coming, or in Messiah, son of Joseph, which is how some Jews interpret the suffering servant passages, such as Rambam and Ramban, and I think Rashi too. So some of like the big guys, Maimonides, Ramban, he interpreted Isaiah 53 in part being the Messiah, being the suffering servant, which we'll get to with that video. That's going to be the next video in this Isaiah series. But Isaiah has these suffering servant Messiah passages and these Davidic ruling Messiah passages. So we have the first coming, the second coming, we have a blending of the two in like Isaiah 11 and Isaiah 42. And we have ones that are just the future coming with like Isaiah 66 with the new earth and new heaven coming. So we have apocalyptic text, which is prophesying the new creation. So Isaiah contains all of these types of prophecies in very explicit detail, and Jesus fulfills many of them. One of them that's really interesting that we don't talk about that much is Yahweh will be a holy place. This is who we're talking about, Yahweh Adonai. For both Israel and Judah, he will be a stone that causes people to stumble and a rock that makes them fall. Many of them will stumble, they will fall down and be broken, and will be snared and captured. Yahweh himself will be a stone that causes people to stumble. It's a strange phrase. We also have, you have forgotten your God, your Savior. You have not remembered the rock, your fortress. So again, he's called a rock. Well, that's a little strange. Yet we have Yahweh saying, see, I lay a stone in Zion, a tested stone, a precious cornerstone for a sure foundation. The one who relies on it will not be stricken with panic. I will make justice the measuring line and righteousness the plumb line. Hail will sweep away your refuge. The lie and water will overflow your hiding place. Your covenant with death will be annulled. Your agreement with the realm of the dead will not stand. When the overwhelming scourges sweep by, you will be beaten down by it. As often as it comes, it will carry you away. Morning after morning, day by night, it will sweep through you. God is putting a stone in Zion, and whoever relies on it will be saved. He will bring justice and righteousness, justice and sinlessness. Okay. So Yahweh is the stone, yet he places it in Israel, in Jerusalem, in Zion. Okay. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. The Lord has done this and is marvelous in our eyes. The Lord has done it to this very day. Let us rejoice today and be glad. You have become my salvation. So again, this is going to be a future video where this just is Yeshua. This is just Jesus. You have become my Jesus. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. And the same thing with, you have forgotten God, your Savior. This is again Yasha. So pretty cool. From Judah will come the cornerstone. Daniel 2, the rock cut out of a mountain, the rock that will break the iron, bronze, clay, and silver and gold to pieces. So this is the Messiah. This is the king that will destroy all other kingdoms. So the Messiah is the rock, yet God is the rock. God places the rock, but God is the rock. How does that make sense? Well, it makes sense in Jesus. This is the meaning of what was written. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Everyone who falls on the stone will be broken into pieces. Anyone who falls will be crushed. So the stone is God, and yet the stone is the Messiah. The stone is God, yet the stone is placed in Jerusalem. Yahweh comes through the east gate. If it's not the Messiah, how does that make sense? If you have an answer in the comments. I'm super curious how you view the Messiah being the stone, the cornerstone, yet God is the cornerstone and the foundation, the rock. Just curious. We also have miracles of Jesus in Isaiah. So he will heal, blind will see, the deaf will hear. There's a couple different passages like that. Here's another one in Isaiah 35. The eyes of the blind will be opened, the deaf will be unstopped, the lame will leap like a deer, and the mute tongue shout for joy. Jesus did all of these prophecies. Whenever John the Baptist was like, hey, how can we know you're actually the Messiah? This is what he was quoting, saying, hey, the blind see, the deaf hear, the lame walk, the mute shout. Jesus is quoting this passage saying, yes, I am the Messiah. This is going to happen. Interesting thing about this passage in Isaiah 35 is before that, it says, strengthen the feeble hands, steady the knees that give way. Say to those with fearful hearts, be strong, do not fear. Your God will come. He will come with vengeance, with divine retribution. He will come to save you. God is going to come. He's going to come to save you. This is the root of Jesus' name. So Jesus is going to come as God, and he's going to do these things. So this whole passage is about Jesus. He fulfilled it. And that was one of his tests, one of his proofs that he was the Messiah himself. Other interesting passage we have in Isaiah 61. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. This word anointed is Mashiach. Messiah. Because the Lord has anointed me, because the Lord has made me the Messiah to proclaim the good news, gospel, to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, and to provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise. So this is the future. This is what actually was quoted by Jesus. Now, that's kind of interesting. So Jesus quotes this passage directly, word for word. He stops at to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, you notice, and the day of vengeance of our God. So Jesus is quoting up until this point, and then he says that the scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. He rolled up the scroll at that point and then said, hey, this is fulfilled. Why? It's not actually fulfilled all the way. The day of vengeance of our God, Armageddon, Judgment Day, that has not happened. This has happened in Jesus. So Jesus quoted the portion that he actually fulfilled, which is really cool. So this is like indicating that his first coming will do that aspect of it. His second coming will do the second aspect of that. The day of vengeance is Jesus's return, where he judges the world. That is where he executes the nations in wrath, which we get in, Revelation, where he's dressed in a robe dipped in blood. His name is the Word of God. It's Jesus. And then he goes and he strikes down the nations. We also get in Thessalonians where he will, judge the nations. Jesus is revealed in heaven from a blazing fire, and he punishes those who don't know God. So this is definitely about Jesus with the day of vengeance of God, where Jesus is God and he's having his vengeance. But Jesus, when he's quoting in Luke, doesn't include that because that's not the purpose of his first coming. So this is really cool too. So this is again dual fulfillment prophecy that Jesus himself is quoting, and he knows that he's only going to have the one coming here that has that, and then the other coming that's not going to have it. And we also have in Isaiah 48, which I mentioned in my first Isaiah video, we have God speaking. He uses the term from Exodus. This is not necessarily this is Anihu, which is I am he, but this I am he is what's quoted in Greek as ego eimi, which Jesus quotes. So Jesus quotes this passage of himself quite often. I am the first and the last. So I am he, ego me, and I am the first and the last. I'm the Alpha and the Omega. These are quoted directly from Jesus. And in this passage, we have the sovereign Lord has sent me endowed with his spirit. There's no quotation marks in Hebrew. In the Hebrew itself, as we see if we go to a better translation of the Bible, turn that off. And now the God has sent me and his spirit. This is all part of the same quotation. So this is Yahweh speaking, and yet Yahweh sends Yahweh along with the Holy Spirit. That means Jesus is God. That Jesus is the one who is God. He's quoting these passages. He's quoting the I, ego, and me, that I am the first and last. He says that he created the universe, that he is eternal. He said, hey, I saw Satan fall out of the heaven into the garden, or out of the garden, either way. He saw Satan fall like lightning. He was there since Adam and Eve. Jesus is eternal. Jesus is God. Jesus is sent by God. This is God sending God. So this is just everything you need for Jesus to be God and the Trinity to be true in the Old Testament. Now you have to actually accept that this means God sent God, but that's what it, there's multiple different ways you can look at it in the Hebrew grammar. I think that's the most valid, that it is not a disjunction, but it is a continuation of the sentence. At that vav there, that is a continuation of the statement. It's I was there and the Lord has sent me. So this is not Isaiah being sent by God. This is God being sent by God. So pretty cool. We also have second coming prophecy. But your dead will live, Lord, their bodies will rise. Let those who dwell in the dust wake up and shout for joy. Your dew is like the dew of the morning. The earth will give birth to her dead. So again, this is second coming prophecy. And those the Lord has rescued will return. They will enter Zion with singing. Everlasting joy will crown their heads. Gladness and joy will overtake them, and sorrow and sighing will flee away. Everlasting joy. They will have eternal glorified bodies. So we have the resurrection, we have glorification in heaven, and we have see a king will reign in righteousness. This is David, the Davidic king. This is Messiah. And rulers will rule with justice. Each one will be like a shelter from the wind and a refuge from the storm, like streams of water in the desert and the shadow of a great rock in a thirsty land. Then the eyes of those who see will no longer be closed, and the ears of those who hear will listen. The fearful heart will know and understand, and the stammering tongue will be fluent and clear. No longer will the fool be called noble, nor the scoundrel be highly respected. So sin is gone. Everyone has this understanding. Everyone has this wisdom of God. And yeah, so this is the description of the second coming of the Messianic reign, that we will be, or not necessarily Messianic reign, this is a description of what life will be like in the new covenant, in the new earth, the new Jerusalem that's coming, which we get in Isaiah 66. So in the new creation that God is making, we will all know him fully, entirely. We will not have any issues with wisdom. We will not have any issues with sin. We will be righteous and joyful for eternity. We will have glorified bodies. Isaiah prophesies all of those things. So pretty cool. And so those are the prophecies I want to cover about the Messiah. There's there's one big prophecy I want to cover not about the Messiah. So in Isaiah, we have lots of prophecies of like the kings being destroyed, and this happened, is fulfilled. So we have the fall of Damascus in it. We also have Babylonian conquest against the different people. So we have all of these type of things. We have Israel regathering from a remnant, which we are currently seeing. And we have like Cyrus's decree to rebuild the temple. This was fulfilled. We have judgment on the nations against Moab and Egypt and Tyre, and they face decline in the way God said. We have judgment on Assyria. So we have all these judgments that did happen. The one I want to focus in on the most is Tyre, for a variety of reasons. One, people like to claim that Tyre is a false prophecy, that it was not fulfilled, that it was a verifiably false prophecy. No, it is definitely a true prophecy. So I'm going to give a little bit of a background on why people think it's a false prophecy, why atheists use this as a false prophecy. This is not necessarily Jewish, but this is like atheism. And how we know it is actually true. There's two different sections of this prophecy. There's one in Ezekiel, which is the meat of it, and then there's one in Isaiah 23. At that time, Tyre will be forgotten for 70 years, the span of a king's life. By the end of these 70 years, it will be happened to Tyre as in the song of the prostitute. Take up a harp, walk through the city, you forgotten prostitute, play the harp well, sing many a song so that you will be remembered. At the end of the 70 years, the Lord will deal with Tyre, and she will return to her lucrative prostitution and will ply her trade with all the kingdoms on the earth, on the face of the earth. Yet her profit and her earnings will be set apart for the Lord. They will not be stored up or hoarded. Her profits will go to those who live before the Lord for abundant food and fine clothes. So there's prophecy of a decline for 70 years, and then they will redo. So this gets into Ezekiel 26 and the destruction of Tyre. I am against you, Tyre. I will bring many nations against you. Many nations, not just one, many nations. Like the sea casting up its waves. They will destroy the walls of Tyre and pull down her towers. I will scrape away her rubble and make her a bare rock. Out in the sea she will become a place to spread fish nets. For I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. She will become plunder for the nations in her settlements, and her settlements on the mainland will be ravaged by the sword. They will know that I am the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. From the north I am going to bring against Tyre Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, king of kings, with horses and chariots, with horsemen and a great army. He will ravage your settlements on the mainland with the sword. He will set up siege works against you, build a ramp on your walls, and raise his shields against you. He will direct the blows of his battering rams against your walls and demolish your towers with his weapons. His horses will be so many that they will cover you with dust. Your walls will tremble at the noise of the war horses, wagons, and chariots when he enters your gates, as men enter a city whose walls have been broken through. The hooves of his horses will trample all your streets. He will kill your people with the sword, and your strong pillars will fall to the ground. They will plunder your wealth and loot your merchandise. They will break down your walls and demolish your fine houses. Throw your stones and timber into the rubble into the sea. I will put an end to your noisy songs, and the music of your harps will be heard no more. I will make you a bare rock, and you will become a place to spread fish nets. You will never be rebuilt, for the Lord has spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. Okay. This is really interesting. Now, you notice there's actually multiple prophecies within this section, which is why people say it's a false prophecy. They're like, oh, well, Nebuchadnezzar did destroy the main city, but he didn't destroy the island city. So the mainland, so Tyre is two cities, tale of two cities. The mainland city was the farmland that actually supplied the food to Tyre, the island, which was the commercial hub of the area. So Tyre was a merchant of the Phoenician Empire. They were like one of the most wealthy and fortified cities in Phoenicia. They had island cities, like I believe Carthage is one of them as well. They had dots all along the Mediterranean, in Africa, and in Greece, and in Europe. So Tyre was the commercial hub of the entire Mediterranean. They were extremely wealthy and extremely prosperous. They were actually extremely boastful and pagans, and they worshipped gods that went against Yahweh. I believe they practiced human sacrifice, although I might be wrong on that. So it's a Phoenician city, and let me show you what it looks like. So today, well, not today, this is what it looked like in the 1920s. So you can see it's just bare here, it's just farmland, and then there's ruins here. This is what some of the ruins look like. This used to be an extremely well-built city. So you can see the city here. It was very well built. It had a lot of walls and it had these docks inside of it that you could go into and do trading in. Well, but Nebuchadnezzar came against the city and he destroyed the mainland, the farmland. He ravaged the ground. He built siege works. He destroyed it. And all of this happened in 586 BC. So right around 200 years after the prophecy was given, Nebuchadnezzar came and destroyed it all, which is interesting. He besieged the city for 13 years. So it talks about how he sieged the city in the text in Ezekiel. This happened exactly as it says. Nebuchadnezzar has a lot of documentation about himself. The Babylonian Empire had many different tablets that they kept their records on. Nebuchadnezzar himself had many tablets. So we actually know a good bit about his life and about his conquests, about his wars. And we know that he besieged Tyre. So we have archaeological evidence of this outside of the Bible that this did happen. The reason why people say it's a failed prophecy is because he didn't completely destroy Tyre in the way that was said. So he did not make it a bare rock. He only destroyed the mainland. He didn't make it a place where to spread fishnets. He didn't destroy the island, which was Tyre proper. Like that was the city. That was the important bit. So he did some of it. He destroyed it. He brought siege works. He sieged them. He destroyed their farmland, raised the people. Like he killed a lot of people. He sieged them for a very long time, but he couldn't conquer them because he didn't have a navy. So he then, because of this, and later on in Ezekiel, it talks about how yet he and his army get no reward from the campaign against Tyre. I'm going to give Egypt to Nebuchadnezzar's king of Babylon. He will carry off its wealth. This also happened. He plundered Egypt, and Egypt, as it says here, he will loot and plunder the land as pay for his army. I've given him Egypt as a reward for his efforts because he and his army did it for me, declares the sovereign Lord. On that day I will make a horn grow for the Israelites. I will open your mouth among them. They will know that I am the Lord. So Egypt did start to fall. It did start to wane after this period of time, and it never actually became an empire itself again. So the last pharaoh was like the last native born Egyptian ruler was taken away in this time period, and then they became a slave state. So even today the official name of Egypt is the Arab Republic of Egypt. So it's not even Egyptians who are ruling it, it's Arabs who are ruling it. Back whenever Greece took over, they were no longer Egyptian, they were Greek rulers. Then Rome took over from Greeks. So you have like Nebuchadnezzar, you have Babylon, Syria, Persia, Greece, Rome, Arabs, Christians, Arabs. You have every single people who are conquering them throughout history from this moment on, whenever Jesus, or not Jesus, well, yes, Jesus, but whenever God said, I am going to destroy Egypt and take away their kings, that happened. So we have fulfilled prophecy with Egypt being diminished, them not having rulership. They had a small kingdom, which is what's described in the text, but it was not actually Egypt proper. Egypt did not become a nation among the nations ever again. Egypt became a puppet state like Israel did. Israel itself was not a nation during the time of Jesus. It was a slave state. They did not have a king. They did not have a native born king in their land. Egypt has not had that for thousands of years. So Nebuchadnezzar did partially fulfill this. He did destroy it, and he didn't receive any money because he wasn't able to plunder the mainland. So then he plundered Egypt. So this is almost entirely fulfilled. And we do get that he conquered Egypt in Jeremiah 43 and 44 and in Josephus's works. So in his Antiquities, in the 10th book, we have Egypt being conquered by Nebuchadnezzar, having decline of 40 years in slavery under Nebuchadnezzar, being liberated by Persia whenever Cyrus comes, and then them not having an actual king for the rest of history. So we have this fulfillment of prophecy where Egypt was destroyed, where Nebuchadnezzar did actually conquer them. So we have proof of this effect. Yet, we don't actually have them being thrown into the sea or them becoming a bare rock. This didn't happen until Alexander the Great came and conquered it. And Alexander the Great conquered it for a really silly reason, which I love. You could say, oh, he was just conquering all of Phoenicia. He's doing it because he just wanted to do it. But the premise and why he started the war is really funny, especially because he was my age whenever he did it. So I'm just imagining myself being ultra petty about something with my own age and experience, except he was a warrior and he already fought like most of Europe, and it's just funny. He thought he was a demigod. He thought he was from the line of Hercules specifically. So any temple, any statue that depicted Hercules, he wanted to worship at. He wanted to portray himself as a demigod. So whenever you see statues of Alexander the Great, he has like on the Nemean lion's mane, and he's holding the club, and he's like, I am Hercules. I mean, hey, he never lost a battle. He definitely had something going for him, but he was very prideful. So he went to Tyre. Tyre had a god that was very similar to Hercules. He identified Tyre's god with Hercules. So he was like, hey, I want to come and worship at your altar because I want to worship Hercules. I want to worship my dad, basically, or my great-great-granddad. And they're like, nah, I'm not gonna let you into the city. He's like, come on guys, let me just, go into the city. And they're like, nah, we're not gonna do it. And he sent some envoys. They're like, hey, just one dude in like a protective party, it's gonna be fine. And they're like, no. And they killed their messenger. This made him very angry. This made him so angry that he started a years long campaign against Tyre, where he tried to conquer the city and he failed kind of spectacularly. So what he ended up doing was he built these things called moles. So if we see it here, this is the mainland, or not mainland, this is the island, and this is the temple in which he wanted to go and worship their god. Well, in 300 BC, so this is 400 years after the prophecy given in Isaiah, we have Alexander the Great building this mole in order to conquer them, because his navy was not good enough to get past the Phoenician fleet. So he builds this structure, and the way he builds this structure is by picking up the stones of the rubble of the mainland city that are 200 years old, and he throws them into the sea. So this thing that says, I'm going to throw your stones and timber and rubble into the sea, this literally happened with Alexander the Great building his siege works in order to conquer the city. He built these towers and he built the way to get to the city. So he built a kilometer-long bridge in the sea by throwing rocks until it hit the seafloor and then building on top of that. These are giant boulders. Not only was this one of the longest moles ever created, it altered the sea currents to this day. So all this beachfront here, so this main street is the mole, everything else is the sea currents changing, because this used to be the ocean. this used to be a kilometer of ocean separating the coastline from the island. He made it no longer an island, he turned it into a peninsula and then conquered it. Like the absolute mad lad. He was so salty that he built a bridge in the ocean in 300 BC to conquer this city, and then he razed it to the ground. It didn't exist. It became full-on rubble. Not only did he raze it to the ground, he threw those rocks into the sea. So this mad lad, this crazy little guy, I don't know if he was little, this crazy unconquered victorious warrior got so salty at not being able to worship his daddy that he threw a kilometer's worth of stone, so like thousands, tens of thousands of tons of stone, an entire city, into the sea, and then destroyed them. What? Crazy. So this did get fulfilled. So whenever it talks about how you will be a bare rock, people spread fish nets there. So these are drag nets. They have to get dried out so after you're done using them. So this is what it was used for 2,000 years. Up until the 1920s, whenever the city was starting to be rebuilt by Lebanon, fishermen would come out, and even to this day, fishermen go out and they spread fish nets on the rock because it's just a really flat, wide area and you can spread out things very easily on it. So for 2,000 years, this was entirely fulfilled. And then this was entirely fulfilled 400 years after prophecy by Alexander the Great. And remember, he'll bring many nations against Tyre. So it's not just Nebuchadnezzar that's going to be doing it, it's many nations. So Nebuchadnezzar did it, Alexander the Great did it, and then other later invasions happened as well. So Muslims conquered it in 638 BC, or AD, whenever they tried to rebuild the city. So every time the city's been rebuilt, so far, it's been destroyed. Then the Mamluks, which are mercenaries, so like Islamic mercenaries, the Mamluks came back and they conquered it again in 1291. AD. So this place has been conquered since Nebuchadnezzar 4 to 6 times, depending on how you count them. Every single time it's been rebuilt, it's been destroyed. It currently has 100,000 people living in that area in modern day Tyre in Lebanon. It's not the Phoenician state of Tyre, so it's like, oh, it's, God said it will never be rebuilt. This is a failed prophecy. It's not. It's a fulfilled prophecy. You just have a weird definition of what it means to rebuild a city. So it's like, imagine this. Imagine I come into your house, I kill you, I burn your house to the ground, I then throw the ashes into the ocean in order to build myself a little pond or a little island within the ocean. Then later I build a new house on it, and then I say, oh, this is your house. Is that your house? Like, let's say I go to my neighbor Kevin. I Kevin, burn his house down, rebuild it years later, and then the other neighbors come and like, oh, Kevin's house is there. Is that actually Kevin's house? No. Is this actually Tyre? No. It's a different kingdom. It's a different type of housing. It's not used the same way. It's not actually like the power is gone. They don't have the type of authority or wealth. Like this was one of the most powerful cities in history, and it was destroyed 5 times. And now it's, the city I live in is more prosperous than this city. I don't live in a big city. I live in a city with 800,000 people. It's almost the same population, but like quadruple the GDP just because I'm in America. So this is not a prosperous place. This is not Tyre. To say, oh, the modern settlement that has 100,000 people in apartment buildings, that is a failure of this prophecy. First off, I would be worried about their safety because every single time the city has been rebuilt, it's been thoroughly slaughtered afterward. I'd be very worried about the people who are actually living there because there's a curse on the land. Second off, it's not actually the same city. It's not the same area. It doesn't work. Anyway, yeah, this is fulfilled prophecy. So we have fulfilled prophecy in Isaiah with the Jews getting their homeland back after 2,000 years, Tyre's destruction, the destruction and the failure of Egypt. They never again became a nation that are their own rulers. We see Tyre had some resurgence between Nebuchadnezzar's destruction and in Alexander the Great's destruction. And we see in Isaiah, whenever it's talking about Isaiah 23, that for 70 years, there's going to be, nothing. Well, after Nebuchadnezzar conquered them, they had a significant downturn in their wealth, and then they became prosperous again. So we see again, you will go back to your lucrative prostitution. They made a ton of money between Nebuchadnezzar and Alexander the Great. After Alexander the Great, it didn't happen. They never again became what they were. The whole Phoenician Empire fell, partially during Alexander the Great because of him, and then soon afterwards because of a variety of other wars that happened. So Isaiah, it's good. A lot of fulfilled prophecy, both about Jesus and about other topics, things that both happened during the time that it was written and things that happened way after the time it was written. So we know that this prophecy is true because it is fulfilled after it is written. And it's very specific. Who in the world would have guessed that a giant city would be torn down and then thrown into the sea to make a bridge to destroy another city? Crazy. Absolutely insane. Yet it happened 400 years later. So, pretty cool. May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you always.